Today we're reading Emma and the Fairy Stirrups by Jennifer Workman, illustrated by Gustyawan. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Emma and her little sister Rosie. Emma and Rosie loved visiting their grandma's house. It wasn't just any grandma's house. Their grandma lived on a horse ranch. Grandma had lots of beautiful horses with long, beautiful manes. One day, Emma and Rosie went to go stay with Grandma and see all the pretty horses. As soon as they arrived, they went to the big red barn where the horses were. "Hello, Emma! Hello, Rosie!" Grandma greeted them with a smile. "Are you ready to see the horses?" "Yes, Grandma," they replied. They went to the pasture where the horses were grazing sleepily. Emma noticed something strange. 3 of the horses had little knots in their manes. "Grandma, why do the horses have knots in their manes?" Emma asked, pointing at the tangles. Grandma chuckled. "Those, my dear, are called fairy stirrups," she explained. "Fairy stirrups?" Emma asked. "Yes," Grandma nodded. "You see, at night when everyone is fast asleep, tiny fairies come to visit our ranch. They love to ride our horses, but their legs are too short for a normal saddle and stirrups. So they tie these special knots in their horses' manes. These knots help the fairies hold on and ride the horses." Emma was very curious to learn more. "Do the horses like giving the fairies rides?" "Oh yes," Grandma smiled. "The horses enjoy the fairies' gentle touch and magical songs. The horses have a very special friendship with the fairies." Emma imagined the tiny fairies with their tiny wings, giggling and singing as they ride through the fields at night. She could almost hear the laughter and see the twinkling lights. Together, Emma and Grandma spent the afternoon brushing the horses' manes, making them smooth and shiny, while Rosie played in the hay. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She was too excited about the fairies and the story Grandma told her. She decided she wanted to see the fairies for herself. Quietly, she tiptoed out of bed and down the stairs. She slipped on her shoes and carefully opened the back door. Emma made her way to the barn, her heart beating fast. She found a cozy spot behind a stack of hay bales where she could hide and watch. The barn was very quiet. As she waited, she saw a cat in the shadows. It pounced and caught a little mouse before disappearing into the night. Emma heard the soft hoot of a barn owl high in the rafters. In the corner of the barn, Grandma's dog, Teddy Bear, was curled up fast asleep and snoring gently. Emma's eyelids were getting heavy. She tried hard to stay awake, hoping to see the magical fairies. Suddenly, she heard what sounded like tiny little bells. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized what she was hearing. Tiny glowing figures floated in the barn, their delicate wings shimmering in the moonlight. It was the fairies! The fairies flew to the horses, who greeted them with quiet whinnies. Emma watched in awe as the fairies hugged and petted the horses. The fairies twirled the horses' manes into the special fairy stirrups. Emma couldn't believe her eyes. The fairies worked quickly, and soon the horses' manes had tiny knots the fairies could use as stirrups. With a flutter of their wings, the fairies hopped onto the horses' backs, slipping their tiny feet into the knots. The horses, now carrying their tiny riders, trotted out to the pasture. Emma peeked through a crack in the barn door, her eyes wide with wonder. The fairies and horses glided with laughter under the moonlight. It was a sight more magical than anything Emma had ever seen. The fairies' laughter filled the night air. Emma found herself giggling quietly along with them. She watched as they rode the horses, their wings sparkling in the moonlight. After a while, the fairies rode the horses back to the barn. They thanked the horses, giving them one last hug. With a final wave, the fairies flew off into the night, disappearing into the dark. Emma quietly went back to the house, climbed into bed, and drifted off to sleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of fairies and their magical rides. The next morning, Emma woke up feeling excited and couldn't wait to tell Grandma and Rosie about the magical fairies and watching them make their fairy stirrups. She quickly got dressed and hurried downstairs, where Grandma was already busy in the kitchen making breakfast. Emma's little sister, Rosie, sat at the table, munching on a piece of toast. "Good morning, Emma," Grandma said with a warm smile. "Did you sleep well?" "Oh, Grandma, I have something amazing to tell you," Emma yelled, her voice sparkling with excitement. Rosie looked up and curiously asked, "What is it, Emma?" Emma told them about her nighttime adventure. She told them all about sneaking down to the barn, hiding behind the hay bales, and watching the fairies tie the magical knots and ride the horses. Rosie's eyes were wide with wonder. "Wow, Emma, you really saw the fairies?" Rosie asked in amazement. "Yes, Rosie, it was the most magical thing I've ever seen," Emma said. After breakfast, Grandma suggested they go out to the barn to brush the horses' manes. "Let's make sure the horses are all nice and tidy for their fairy friends," she said with a wink. Emma, Rosie, and Grandma headed out to the barn together. The horses seemed a bit sleepy, their eyes half closed as they stood peacefully in the pasture. Emma now understood why. They had been up all night giving rides to the fairies. Together they brushed the horses' manes, making them smooth and shiny. That evening, as they prepared for bed, Rosie turned to Emma. "Emma, can I watch the fairies with you tonight? I want to see them too." Emma smiled and nodded. "Of course, Rosie. It will be so much fun." Grandma set up cozy cots in the barn for the girls, with warm, fluffy blankets. She even made them mugs of hot chocolate with marshmallows on top. As they settled into their cots, Grandma tucked them in and kissed their foreheads. "Sleep tight, my little adventurers," she said with a smile. "I hope you have a magical night." Emma and Rosie sipped their hot chocolate, feeling warm and happy. The barn was quiet except for the gentle snoring of Teddy Bear in the corner and the occasional soft nicker from the horses in their stalls. As the night grew darker, Emma and Rosie lay close together, whispering and giggling, waiting for the fairies to arrive. Just like the night before, a soft glow appeared at the entrance of the barn. Emma and Rosie held their breath as the tiny glowing fairies fluttered inside. They watched as the fairies greeted the horses, their laughter filling the air. Rosie gasped with delight as the fairies began to tie the magical knots in the horses' manes. Quietly, she said, "Look, Emma, they're making the fairy stirrups." Emma nodded. "I told you, Rosie, it's real magic." The fairies mounted the horses, feet firmly in the fairy stirrups, and together they rode out into the moonlit pasture. Emma and Rosie watched as the fairies and horses rode under the stars. The next day, Emma, Rosie, and Grandma had to brush out the horses' manes again. It was hard work, and by the time they were done, Grandma was so tired she almost didn't have enough energy to get dinner ready on time. That night, Emma had an idea. She was going to talk to the fairies and ask them if they could brush out their fairy stirrup knots so that Grandma wouldn't have to do it. She tiptoed out of bed and made her way to the barn. She found her usual hiding spot behind the hay bales and settled in to wait. After a while, the soft glow appeared at the barn's entrance. Emma watched as the fairies fluttered in. They greeted the horses and started making their fairy stirrups again. Taking a deep breath, Emma stepped out of her hiding place. "Hello, fairies," she said softly. The fairies were startled and almost flew away, but one of them, a tiny fairy named Mildred, recognized Emma. He had seen her the last few nights and knew she was kind and wouldn't hurt them. "Wait," Mildred called to the other fairies, Pip and Bip. "I think Emma wants to talk to us." Pip and Bip hesitated, but they trusted Mildred and flew back. The three fairies hovered in front of Emma. Emma smiled and apologized. "I'm sorry for startling you and for spying on you. I just need to talk to you about something important." "What is it, Emma?" Mildred asked, his voice as light as a breeze. Emma explained how hard it was to brush out the fairy stirrups every day and how Grandma, being older, got tired very quickly. "I was wondering if you could brush out the manes after you're done riding," she said. Mildred, Pip, and Bip looked at each other with a sadness in their eyes. "We would love to help, Emma," Mildred said, "but we're too small to hold the brushes." Emma's heart sank a little, but she knew that she could think of something. The next day, Emma had a great idea. She decided to make tiny brushes for the fairies so they could help keep the horses' manes smooth. She gathered some toothpicks, yarn, and a pencil eraser, and sat down at the kitchen table to work. Grandma noticed Emma working hard and asked, "What are you making, Emma?" Emma looked up with a smile. "I'm making tiny brushes for the fairies, Grandma. This way they can brush out the fairy stirrups themselves." Grandma chuckled. "That's a clever idea, Emma. I'm sure the fairies will be very happy." As Emma worked on her tiny brushes, Rosie played nearby. She played with the yarn, pretending it was a lasso. Rosie managed to get herself tangled up in the yarn, giggling as she tried to wiggle free. Emma smiled and finished making the tiny brushes. They were just the right size for the fairy's small hand. That night, she slipped the brushes into her pocket and quietly made her way to the barn once more. She knew she didn't have to hide anymore. Soon the glow appeared at the door, and the fairies fluttered in, ready for another night of horseback riding. Mildred, Pip, and Bip smiled and burst into laughter when they saw Emma. "Hello, Emma," they said excitedly. "Hello, fairies," Emma said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the tiny brushes. "I made these for you. They're just the right size for you to brush out the fairy stirrups." The fairies came closer, their eyes wide with glee. "Oh, Emma, these are perfect," Pip exclaimed, twirling in delight. "Thank you so much, Emma," Bip added, giving her a tiny bow. Emma handed the brushes to the fairies, who eagerly took them. "I'm glad you like them. Now you can help keep the horses' manes smooth and pretty." That night, after they had their moonlight rides, the fairies used the tiny brushes to carefully untangle the fairy stirrups. They worked quickly, their laughter filling the barn as they brushed and brushed. Emma tried to stay awake and watch, but she was so tired from staying up so late every night that she fell fast asleep in her warm cot. The next morning, Emma woke up with a smile. She knew that the fairies had used the brushes she made and that the horses' manes would be smooth and beautiful. After breakfast, when she, Rosie, and Grandma went out to the horses, they found all the horses looking very sleepy but very well groomed. Grandma looked at Emma with a smile. "It seems your plan worked, Emma." Emma nodded, feeling proud. The fairies were so happy with the brushes. They did a wonderful job. Rosie hugged Emma. "You're the best sister ever, Emma. Thank you for helping the fairies and the horses." "And Grandma," Grandma said as she chuckled. "Wow, wasn't that a magical story? I love how Emma and the fairies work together to help Emma's grandma." If you want to get your own copy, check out Emma and the Fairy Stirrups by Jennifer Workman. See you next time.